the top stories of today and the main headlines of the week. You're just in time for the Weekly on RT International. Of course, it was this week that America chose Donald Trump, the businessman and political outsider, as its 45th president. It's a result that came as a shock and surprise to many, and one that has ultimately split the nation. Ahead of voting day, almost every single poll pointed to Hillary Clinton as the winner. The dynamics only began to shift well into the counting when swing states started going to Trump. And why both media and pollsters alike were so wrong at the end of it has left many experts scratching their heads.
He's getting absolutely slaughtered. Hillary Clinton's up by 30 points.
Hillary Clinton holding steady.
Hillary Clinton up 4 points. This guy is a complete clown.
Rodeo clown.
Dangerous clown.
It would be an embarrassment and a tragedy for this country if Donald Trump were somehow to be elected president.
Big defection on the Republican side.
More than 70 Republicans have signed an open letter to their party chairman urging him to stop funding Donald Trump's campaign.
This is a huge indicator that something is inherently flawed in that system, that informational system. I mean, if you watch MSNBC or you watch ABC or you watch Fox, doesn't matter.
Well, we've been talking with experts about why people voted for Trump and what we can now expect from a Trump presidency.
And I think it helps remind the establishment it works for the people, not the other way round. For the first time, they feel like they have a man who understands they want their jobs back. They have a man who understands they don't want illegal immigrants to be able to enter the country. They have a man who understands that allowing Muslims to come into the country, unfettered access, is not securing America.
This will be a fantastic test to see whether the Constitution actually works, whether you can take a successful guy, reasonably intelligent guy with good intentions. He wants to take time off from the private sector, be president for 4 or 8 years, and go back to the private sector. It should work. That's the way it's designed. Let's see if it works. Hillary Clinton was just going to be a continuation of a dictatorial interpretation of the presidency where presidents were signing off on executive orders and bypassing the Constitution, and that's completely anathema to what we as Americans would expect our president to do.
He will assume office, and unlike any president in my lifetime, he owes nothing to the Republican establishment, to the European Union, to NATO. The only people he really owes things to are ordinary people, so it's a totally different dynamic. And instead of seeing him immediately pulled into the globalist orbit, you're going to see him set his own course in world affairs, and I think that is tremendous for world peace.
Still, Trump's proven to be a very polarizing candidate and now president-elect, with protests against him erupting immediately after the outcome of the election became obvious. And people have continued to pour onto the streets across the country every night. And these are some of the latest pictures from New York. Now, the protests have remained generally peaceful, although a number of arrests have been made. And while the majority of protesters have remained civil while expressing their anger, others have lashed out.
You voted Trump! You voted Trump! Oh, yeah! Yeah, he voted Trump! Don't vote Trump! Yeah, don't vote Trump!
Yeah, this video was posted on social media, appearing to show some blacks attacking a white man who voted for Trump. Well, extreme reactions to Trump's success were also seen in the media all around the world. Victory was painted as a shock, even in the most restrained headlines, some likening it to a global catastrophe. Still, though, he remains a democratically elected leader. And RT's Miguel Francis Santiago takes a closer look.
Protests in major U.S. inner cities, L.A., Chicago, New York, all have fallen to what can be best described as Trumpophobia.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay, Donald Trump, go away!
mainstream media, especially on the progressive and liberal side, freaked out. CNN went further.
ISIS this morning are actually celebrating Trump's victory.
Yes, the network got the world's worst terrorists' reaction. There it is. Billionaire fool will destroy America himself. And get this, comparing the worst terror attack in U.S. history to the presidential election. You heard it. 9/11 and 11/9 are equally horrifying. BuzzFeed's already counting down to the next presidential election. It's in just over 3 years and 11 months, so hang on there a bit. And if you're suffering from the PTSD, or the post-Trump stress disorder, there is a crisis helpline. Thank you, Huffington Post. Well, dear MSM, maybe you should call it, since you obviously can't cope with the fact that America elected its president. Thank you. That's how their democracy works, and has been working perfectly fine for the past 229 years. Strong enough, apparently, to tell other countries how to do it properly, until, that is, someone from outside the Capitol Hill Club gets the top job. I'm Miguel Francis Santiago.
The first face-to-face meeting between the current President Obama and Donald Trump has taken place at the White House. Obama described their meeting as, quote, excellent, despite previously saying Trump was unfit for the job. But many social media users were more interested in the body language of the two.
And it could have, as far as
Michelle has had a chance to,
in the future, including counsel.
questions when they just start yelling at us. Come on, guys.
I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
On Wednesday, Obama addressed White House staff, calling for them to welcome the next president with open arms. Doesn't look like any of them are ready to do so. In fact, many of them wearing black, and some of the aides there reportedly reduced to tears as the outgoing leader was speaking. But Obama's words come in stark contrast to those he was using in the run-up to the vote.
This guy is temperamentally unfit to be commander-in-chief. Donald Trump is uniquely unqualified to hold this job. Come on. This guy, I mean, it's strange how over time what is crazy gets normalized. We all want what's best for this country. That's what I heard when I spoke to him, and I was heartened by that. That's what the country needs.
And he was not the only one to change tack on Trump's presidency. Trump was attacked on many fronts by the Clinton camp during the election over his alleged connections to Russia. And following the billionaire businessman's victory, Vladimir Putin was among world leaders to send in congratulations.
Russia is ready and willing to restore fully fledged relations with the US. We realize this is going to be a tough task given how they've deteriorated recently, but we are ready to play our part and do our utmost to put our relations back on track.
Well, this immediately sparked reaction in the Western media, with headlines claiming Russia's rejoicing and celebrating the win of the US Republican nominee. And it didn't take long for claims to emerge once again that Russians were meddling in the election even after the votes were counted.
This is the first election in which an enemy power deliberately and explicitly interfered in our election and got away with it.
Russian President Vladimir Putin playing a central role in the 2016 campaign.
We've now heard from one of the most controversial figures in this election, besides the two candidates, Vladimir Putin.
Well, Russia was frequently in the spotlight during the election. The presidential debates saw the country and Putin mentioned 178 times. Compare that with what's supposed to be a global threat of Islamic State. That only came in at 132. So many claims were made about Russia, in fact, during the election, and they still are. The defeated Democrats now saying the shock result is a cause for celebrations in Moscow, perhaps something like this. It's been 5 days since the historic election, and the first British politician to meet Donald Trump was UKIP party interim leader Nigel Farage. He visited the newly elected president at his home in New York. Some predictions say Europe's establishment now needs to watch its back, with a sense that voters worldwide are going against the status quo. Here's Paulie Boyka.
When Britain went Brexit, the fuse was lit. Then Donald Trump's election proved Americans were fired up with the anti-establishment bug too. So where next will the political old guard get a kicking? Brexit's cheerleader-in-chief, Nigel Farage, thinks he knows.
Don't be surprised to see this political revolution elsewhere, perhaps in Europe next year.
Here's how Europe's political calendar is shaping up for the year ahead. Elections for the presidency in France and the Czech Republic, German parliamentary elections, and another independence referendum in Catalonia. They're all potential hazards for Europe's political establishment, leaving it susceptible to yet more nasty surprises. Enthused by Trump's success, French right-wing leader Marine Le Pen hopes to inflict a blow at next year's presidential election.
What happened tonight is not the end of the world, it's the end of a world. The Americans now have a president they chose, and not the one wanted by the establishment.
Before Wednesday, Le Pen's chances were dismissed as slim. Now French pollsters talk of President Le Pen as a genuine possibility. Meanwhile, the Dutch Freedom Party is as popular in the polls as the ruling Liberals.
I think that the people of America, as in Europe, feel insulted by all the politicians that ignore the real problems. That is one of the reasons that you see also in Europe that things will change. Politics will never be the same, and what I call the patriotic spring will have had an enormous incentive, and that is the lesson that we learned.
And in case anyone's tempted to dismiss these as just fringe politicians, the lesson from Brexit is a small party with a big message can win the day.
I think this is a revolution. This is a follow-on to Brexit. This is Brexit 2. This is where the British told their ruling class, their political class, their journalistic class where to go, and now the Americans have done exactly the same with Donald Trump.
In a few weeks, Austrian voters might do the same, potentially electing Europe's most right-wing head of state since 1945. Until now, few viewed the populists as a plausible threat, and Brexit had been blamed on elderly British voters having a moment of madness. Now that Trump's victory is sealed, the message to continental Europe is that change can come anytime. Paulie Boyka, RT, London.
A lot still to come here on The Weekly on RT International, including amnesty.